The great IT skills gap. How big is it and what can we do about it? To talk more about this, I'm joined by the CIO and Vice President at Clemson University, Russ Collado. Russ, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Really appreciate it.
Well, I know it's a topic that's near and dear to your heart, both as an IT leader but also as an educator. But I'll just start with the first question, which is, how big is this skills gap? Because we hear a lot about skills shortages. We were in the Executive Summit yesterday here at Evolve, and the top topic that came up from IT leaders is the fact that they've got a talent problem. As you talk to business leaders, how big is this issue?
It's pretty vast. I think one of the things, and they mentioned it at this morning around the whole STEM aspect of it and tying it back to the whole space aspects of it, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty interesting that really was the core from there going forward and focusing on STEM. When in fact in the humanities and the soft skills side, there's still a predominance that most don't really focus on. That gap is large. We're finding statistically, if you go out, and even Gartner talks about this as well, you're talking about students when they come out after graduation, going into the workforce, the ramp up is between 12 to 18 months for any company to get anyone to the level of which then they can then hit the ground running at a corporate level from a business standpoint. That's large of a gap, and this is across all fronts, so it's substantial.
I want to touch on that because you raised something that I hadn't stopped to think about, which is do we have enough people is one question with the skills, so like security and so forth, but then there's also, are they workforce ready when they leave the education process? So it's not so much a skills gap in terms of we don't have enough, but maybe those people aren't ready to be productive in my organization.
No, you're absolutely correct. I think it's more along the lines of they are definitely graduating. They're actually, with good scores and good at that aspect of it, but are they, to your point, workforce ready? The argument is they're not. And it's really one of where they talk about the fact that they're not digitally literate. And not that they're digitally completely illiterate, but they're not digitally literate. Most everyone that comes out of the university has a capacity of Facebook, social media, their iPhone, but they really don't understand from a digital literacy standpoint of what that really means when you're going into the workforce. And every company out there is talking about digital transformation and what that really means. And it's relative to each specific company, but it's really important to make sure that the student, when they graduate, has the understanding and capacity, and we can focus on data as a key element of that in itself, and understanding data and being data literate.
So when we talk about digital literacy then, are we talking about hard skills, soft skills? What type of skills are business leaders looking for?
It's actually on the more predominantly, surprisingly, it's on the soft skills side. It's more along the lines of getting just a rudimentary understanding of what it means to be digitally literate in these different aspects. In cybersecurity, data is really a key aspect of it. Ethics, we talked about ethics earlier today. If you have an understanding from a digital literacy standpoint of all those things, let's say from a freshman student coming in and now has an understanding of what it means to look at this data or this data repository and the elements that fall into it, they have a better understanding from a soft skills aspect to then make decisions. Whereas we think about the hard skills as that, bits and bytes. They really need to drill down on it. We're finding at Clemson is that we're seeing a predominance coming out of the humanities side. Not that our CSs are not there, they're already understanding it, but they're more on the technical level, not at the soft skills and really understanding it from a broad perspective. Think about it in these terms as a traditional student, in the world that you and I come from, walking in, sitting down, looking face forward, basically, and then being instructed to the world that we're in today with multimedia, social media, and all of that. That's that dynamic pull, tug and pull for them to be really effective. How do you then educate at a different level? And that's the challenge going into it. I'm looking at it from the CIO perspective. We have an opportunity in the beginning phases of it to build on that aspect of it from a digital literacy standpoint and understanding what it is we need to put in play. That gives them an opportunity to actually then build on their own profile and understanding that, well, if I take this course in cybersecurity, I have an understanding of rudimentary aspect of it, from a data literacy standpoint, that there is a value proposition at the end that could actually be meaningful from an educational standpoint. We're taking a really strong stance on this. One of what we did prior is that we established a campus-wide licensing agreement with Adobe, as an example.
Okay, why was that important?
It was important because we looked at it to then say we realized is that from a creative content and really driving creativity and innovation on the campus, that this was a really core component of it. And over the last several years, it has blown up. I mean, it has really grown to mass numbers, of which then we now have students of which then are producing and putting together a collection of works that are just outstanding. We have a professor who actually is teaching a class that then says, here's this book, and really I want you to go home and read it. Instead of coming back and just give me a dissertation and write up on about the book itself, I want you to do it in a multimedia, social media context. And so they're working collaboratively and individually, and the works that they're putting together in that aspect of it are phenomenal.
You're really talking about getting these students ready for the workforce of the future, where every enterprise is digital, aren't you?
That is correct.
That's amazing.
That is correct. And so there's we look at it as a value proposition to this, not just within Clemson, but for corporations themselves. If we can close that gap, there's more of an opportunity for a corporation to look at Clemson and say, hey, these students are more prepared. We want to take a look and see what they're doing, and then give them an opportunity and a leg up from a competitive standpoint in going into the workforce.
Fabulous stuff. Question for you. We're here at ASG Evolve.
Right.
What role are ASG playing in helping you do what you do?
Well, it was interesting. One of the things coming in is to look at ASG from a platform standpoint, because there's all other facets. You have Tableau, you have Splunk, you have all these different aspects of it. ASG could play a really key role in that integration piece and that business process element, of which then could really help facilitate what we just talked about from end to end. I'm looking at this as one of the things that came out recently in a survey among CIOs. Number one concern, cybersecurity. Number two was data, BI, and AI. Right?
Yeah.
And if you take that as into considerations, that's where I see where there's an opportunity for corporations to come in like an ASG and actually be part of that makeup and that fit as we progress and we move forward from an educational process.
That's fabulous stuff. If people want to learn more about what you're doing at Clemson, where can they go?
Clemson.edu and /Big Tent.